welcome back to this week's episode of Tuesday Tips with Ryder Realty. I'm here again with Esta Ryder, and today we are going to be talking about increasing your home value. So if you're a homeowner and you just want to increase your value, we're going to talk about two sides of it. There's the side of making it look pretty and what a buyer wants, and then there's the sides of like on paper from an appraiser, what really increases your value. So Esta, which side do you want to start off with?
Ooh, let's start off with the buyer side.
Okay. Buyers definitely like things pretty for the most part. Mm-hmm. A typical buyer. Of course, you always have the buyers that want to fix her up and things like that. I'm going to go off. The first thing that jumps in my head is wallpaper. Get your wallpaper down. I know we've talked about that on several other podcast episodes before, but it's so important.
Yeah.
That buyers see so much work in that and they think of that as like time and money. So if you're just looking for something right off the bat, take your wallpaper down.
And another thing too would be like, let's say you've lived in a house for several years and you know, it needs a fresh coat of paint would go a long way. New hardware on door handle or like kitchen cabinets.
Cupboards, yep.
Mm-hmm. Those are things that go a long way. Wiping down the cabinets. Certain color cabinets are going to show things more than other colors. Mm-hmm. So some of those would be easy things to freshen up, as well as your landscaping or painting a front door.
Yep.
That aren't going to be super expensive things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But now we can also talk about more expensive things to do that you could do if you wanted to. I mean, you could always remodel a whole kitchen or remodel bathrooms, all new flooring. What are some other things like that? Big things you can think of.
Carpet, but sometimes it just needs a good scrub for your carpet. Your roof, if you have a really bad roof, and getting that done can increase your value from a buyer's perspective.
Right, especially when the parents come, they're like, oh, it has a new roof and a new water heater. And if it's somebody who is valuing, you know, a lot of times in all age levels, you might see parents come if they're handy or to give their input. And so that's kind of some things that they'll look for.
Finishing up your projects. My parents' house in particular, they redid their living room and they have a whole section of their wall. My dad has not put the trim back on, and my mom has been asking for years, please put the trim on the wall. Mm-hmm. So I think just tying up some loose ends with things like that makes things look cleaner and neater.
And a buyer will notice that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're going to, and I always talk to my sellers about this, there's two ways to look at a remodel. One is, are you doing it for you or are you doing it for resale?
Yes.
So if you are somebody who likes something that a lot of buyers might not, but you're doing it for you and you understand that might have to be redone to sell, or a buyer might not appreciate it and want to pay you as much, then that's fine. If the carpet doesn't need to be replaced, but just cleaned, like you're saying, sometimes I'll still have a seller who will say, but I want to put new carpet in. Yeah. And I will tell them, well, it's not going to add any value to the buyer because what you have looks great. So are you doing it for you or are you doing it to increase value? And a lot of times say, no, I want to do it for me. I've always wanted a new carpet, whatever. And then that's fine. But make sure that you know if it's for you or for resale, because sometimes the for you stuff you're not going to get your money back out of. So it may be a nice thing, but not enough of a change where that's going to make a difference.
Right. All this stuff is more like to catch a buyer's eye, not necessarily to increase that home value on paper. But on paper, when that appraisal comes out and the document they use, what are some things, Esta, that increases that value on paper?
Well, a lot of it's going to be out of their control because a house, they're going to look at the age of the house, the size of the house, the lot size, and homes close to it. And there's nothing that a seller can do about that. But something that they can make a difference, that they can do to make a difference would be things like a finished basement. The problem with finished basements, you have to be careful because typically what it's going to cost you to remodel a basement, if it's completely unfinished when you start, you're not going to get near that back as far as dollar for dollar. But that would be something that a homeowner could do, maybe freshen up a basement that's already finished or something like that. Adding a deck or a patio, if you don't have one, that would be another option. If you live in an area like we do, where a lot of homes have central air, but a lot of them don't, that adding central air would be something that could add a value on an appraisal.
Another one would be adding bathrooms, bedrooms.
Yeah, so if you have a 1-bathroom house and you make it a 2-bathroom house where the bathroom is, on the, like, not a basement bathroom, like on the main level, whether you're putting an addition into a house or making whatever, however you might be doing that bathroom, yes, that would add value. Another thing to remember too, back to just what like a seller can do, is that timing is everything. Mm-hmm. So if you're moving into a house in 2020 and you're remodeling it to look like an updated house in 2020, but then you sell it in 2030 or 2035, yeah, you completely updated it, but those updates are 10, 15 years old.
Yes.
So now you have to remember that they're outdated to some degree, and then you can decide if you're going to leave that or change it to increase the value. So I would tell somebody to decide, if it's only going to be 5 years that they live there, they can decide if they want to make it nice and fresh when they first moved in and enjoy it, or if they'd rather pick out the projects and have it looking nice in the 5th year, because that way if there's things that change in style, like hardware or whatever, they're kind of at the top of that point.
So a good example for that is it's Christmas time and I've been watching Home Alone. And so the mansion on Home Alone is this crazy nice house. And I remember being a kid and thinking like, oh, these people are so rich. That house is so nice. But now we look at it and it's just so 90s. And if I was selling that house today, I would be thinking, wow, this house is so outdated. But it is a really nice house.
And I thought that too. And houses I've seen that were maybe redone in the last, not even necessarily that long of a time, but the last few years or 10 years, you kind of notice some things that, a buyer might notice too. But part of it is just weighing out, is the cost of what you're doing worth it? And that's where the small things come into play, like a fresh coat of paint and cleaning your carpets and changing hardware. Those are really simple, easy things that you can do that are not super expensive, that can make a difference and add value. So that way a buyer is like, oh, wow, this has some updates. I can just move right in. That makes a difference to them because they're so used to seeing that on TV. Some of them don't have the money to do the updates. Some of them don't think they have the talent to do the updates. Some just want to move in. So any of those buyers, by doing some of those little things and giving them like a fresh, house to move into, they're going to be willing to pay more for that than a house down the street that might even be the same floor plan, but maybe not have the updates of the paint colors and the hardware and, the landscaping and things like that.
Right. You have told me before about this really good driveway story when you had your house appraised. Let's talk about that.
Oh, yes, my driveway. So we have a concrete driveway, which is what is required in our allotment. It had been pretty messed up and torn up when we bought the house. And so it was time to replace it. And I remember that we were refinancing right around that time and we were trying to figure out how to time everything. And I told because we were having another baby, to make sure that we had our driveway before we brought him home, but we had to time it just right. So I told the appraiser, hey, we're getting our driveway put in like 2 weeks and this is why. And obviously it's really not appealing how it looks. What does that do to our, value as you're looking at this appraisal, as you're doing the appraisal? And he said, it does nothing. He said, a concrete driveway will look nicer than a gravel driveway. But as far as literally adding value where I make a mark on my appraisal document, it does not do anything. And I can say that firsthand with our house. We have put in way more money into our house than it's worth for everything from an addition to doing windows and roof and the driveway and all of the different components we've done, doors. We have put in more money than we know we can get out of it, but it's our forever house. We've been okay with that.
Right.
So it is, and that's why if you're thinking about selling, it is nice to talk to a realtor first because they can tell you, okay, I would do this or not do this, or these are some things that you can do. And sometimes adding value might just be decluttering it or making a room look bigger by how you decorate it. It may not be actually spending a dime. It might just be taking some stuff out or rearranging the pieces that you have. And so I think it's better to ask your realtor and get that in advance than try to guess on your own. That's why we're doing this podcast, to give you some general ideas, because so many people just try to figure it out and may or may not realize, if they're making the best decisions or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So my own story for adding value in our house that we bought, when we bought it, we redid all things like paint, carpet, some hardware, light fixtures, things like that. And that was something that we did do that did add value.
So there's lots of different things you could do. And a lot of it, remember, just get advice from your realtor and make sure that you're enjoying it as well. You know, if that's your plan.
So whether you are selling your house soon, or you just bought a house looking for value, you want to do a reappraisal and get some money out, these are all tips that we hope find you well. Of course, talk to us if you have any other questions or a different situation that we didn't cover today. Thank you again for tuning into this week's episode with Ryder Realty's Tuesday Tips. Thank you, Esta, for coming. We look forward to hearing from you next week. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.